Greetings, Aquaba. Welcome. Hello, hello, hello. Happy Sunday. Hope you all are hope you're at your highest level of mental, physical, and spiritual strength. And if for some reason you're not there, and there are many reasons why you wouldn't be there, that you're hopefully on your way to getting there as soon as is humanly possible. Welcome to this 163rd episode of Our Ancestors' Voices, a program sponsored each Sunday, same time, same place, by the All African People's Revolutionary Party. We're grateful for you spending this hour today with us. We're going to be talking about Reframing July 4th, coming in 2 days. For those of you that don't live in the United Snakes of America, and for those of us that do, the purpose of today's program is simply to put in a proper historical context what this commemoration of this country's so-called independence actually means in a healthy way for us as colonized people, breaking through all the backward reactionary propaganda that they put on us our entire lives here. Bow down to the flag. I'm out here at a campground, and Shakura's dealing with her power being out after a thunderstorm. So she's sitting in her car doing this program, and I'm at this campsite. So hopefully our resources hold out. But if you know anything about camping in this backward cesspool society, then you go to these places, and a lot of the people here are right-wing reactionary type people, because these are the people who mostly have resources to do this. And they always have these Blue Lives Matter flags. You see them everywhere. Blue Lives Matter, capitalism, pro-police, pro-America, pro-all, red, white, and blue, all this stuff. So we're flying from our rig, the red, black, and green flag. And people have come up and asked us, what does that flag mean? And I just keep telling them it's the flag for African freedom. It's the Pan-African flag. It's the flag for African revolution. And that's all I say. Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, go back to your Blue Lives Matter. So we're here to reframe this. We're not falling. We're not bowing down to this. We're going to tell it like it is. And so we're glad that you're here to join us. And again, we appreciate Shakura joining despite her challenges with not having power on. So we'll just do our usual introductions. The program, Our Ancestors' Voices, again, is sponsored by the All African People's Revolutionary Party, APRP. APRP, Revolutionary Independent Mass Pan-African political party based in Africa with chapters all over the world, with an objective of achieving Pan-Africanism, which we define correctly as one unified socialist Africa, which we believe is the solution to the problems our people face all over the planet Earth. And our work to achieve Pan-Africanism is not just carried out on a whim. It's a scientific strategy outlined by Asaji-Fo Kwame Nkrumah in the Handbook of Revolutionary Warfare, the cover of which you see displayed on your screen if you have one. And this particular APRP program, Our Ancestors' Voices, is sponsored each week by myself, Ajamu, and Shakura, my biological and ideological daughter. And we are both proud organizers for the All African People's Revolutionary Party. So to get us started on Reframing July 4th, I'll turn it over to Shakura.
Thank you so much, Father. Appreciate that. Greetings, everyone. Greetings. So I think it's important for us to set the tone in understanding why this holiday is such a contradiction within itself. We have to first ask ourselves, what is the purpose of July 4th? What is the purpose of it? Well, according to capitalist, imperialist curriculum, if you were unfortunately educated in North America, then you were taught that this was a day where folks were supposed to, quote unquote, celebrate America achieving its independence. And the first contradiction that I think comes to mind when I think about my organizing space as an All African People's Revolutionary Party member is you can't celebrate independence on land that's already been claimed by someone else. Just like my dad just acknowledged, the indigenous people of the Western Hemisphere, Americas have always been their land. Parts of Canada have always been their land, all the way down to parts of Chile and up all the way to the top of Canada. That is all of their land. And so That's the very first contradiction, I think, is that Europeans came over and stole land, and in doing so celebrated theft, they celebrated raping, and they celebrated exploiting of resources, not just to the indigenous people, but also to African people. They celebrated the same exact things for both groups of people, raping people, stealing of land in both contexts, and exploiting the resources that come from those lands. And then putting their names on it, taking credit for how those resources were produced, and expecting other people to give them credit for the production of the resource, because then they started exchanging the resources for bartering and trading and things of that. And so we just have to think about that in terms of how that's framed. We have to think about the intentionality of what happened to the indigenous people by way of them being removed ideologically, physically, spiritually, and being forced from a violent standpoint to leave the spaces that they had already claimed as their own. And we can think about proclamations such as the Homestead Act, and how that had so much to do with the erasure of indigenous people, which today is still an impact where a lot of folks don't even know the history of unthanksgiving because of Homestead Act intentionalities to erase indigenous people, to literally make people forget that this is their land, to make people forget that this has always been their land, and to make people forget that they have the right to their land back, which is why we need to stop celebrating holidays that celebrate them not having their land. It's very, counterintuitive when we think about it, because the same system that we live in will encourage us to be inhumane and will encourage us to ignore the fact that this is their land. But you can't ignore what's right. And you can't ignore the fact that if we are to achieve our land being given back to us as Africans, then we have a moral responsibility to support indigenous people in getting their land back. It is literally our responsibility from a humane, ethical standpoint to do so. We cannot celebrate our own achievements of achieving Africa back if we know that the indigenous people have not accomplished what they set out to do either. Because you know why? A threat to us is them not having their land back. And a threat to them is us not having our land back. Because the same people who are impacting indigenous people are impacting Africans. And they're going to continue to impact Asian descent people. They're going to continue to impact Irish descent people. They're going to continue to impact LGBTQ people. They're going to continue to impact non-male marginalized groups. They're going to continue to impact differently able people. You all have already seen this play out. And we said this time last year, when the Janus Law took place, which affected unions, and then we said after Janus Law, they're not going to stop. They're going to keep going, and they're going to start tackling every single one of us. And shortly after the Janus Law, a couple of months later, Roe versus Wade was overturned. But we said it wasn't going to stop there. We said we were going to continue on, and we're going to continue to fight because they're going to keep going. Now you've heard about these homophobic laws that are coming out, and we already know about the affirmative action. And so the point that we're trying to make here, you all, is that America was never supposed to be a quote unquote home for African people. We never should have taken away the indigenous people's land. And we have to live up to that and make it right. In our work study circle yesterday, we finished up W.E.B. Du Bois's A World in Africa, Democracy of a Different Color. And he was just saying in the very last chapter that Africans who were kidnapped from the continent and brought to the diaspora, specifically the Western Hemisphere, they were taught that that was only temporary for them to come to America. They were taught, and they communicated with one another, that this is not forever. We just need to achieve our freedom so that we can go back home. W.B. Du Bois wrote that in the 1800s, you all. He knew even then that this was the case, and we have somehow forgotten that. We have forgotten that just because you give us a little bit of equity, or you allow us to get a car, or you allow us to have a home loan so we can buy a house, that we just have to deal with what the circumstances are, that we just have to fit in, and we just have to accept capitalism. And the irony of that, when I read Du Bois's words, were that now you have Africans who are feeding into the same system that is exploiting their mother, that is exploiting Mother Africa. Because by us purchasing these cars and these houses and not organizing and speaking truth about other colonized people and their downfalls, We are celebrating capitalism. We are promoting capitalism, and we are encouraging capitalism to keep slapping us in the face. We're not even asking capitalism to slap us from behind. We are walking right up to capitalism and saying, I would much rather stay in America because I'm comfortable here and I have a good credit score, versus acknowledging the fact that America has ruined Africa. But we can still do something about that. We can still stop it. We don't have to let it continue. That's the beauty of consent. Is the minute you stop giving someone permission to violate you, it is up to you to let them know that they can never do it again. And so we have a responsibility to think about that, you all. The indigenous people are counting on us. And they have shown up for us more times than I care to admit, because they have always been there for us. Even before I was born, I remember learning about the sacrifices that folks from the American Indian movement have made. This is why, since I was a child, we continue to go up to Alcatraz on Thanksgiving, because we want to continue to acknowledge and honor the sacrifices that not only they have made, but the troublesome trials and tribulations that they have gone through, because people have literally erased them from the timeline of existence. And that just blows my mind, that you can be on someone's property and not acknowledge them. That blows my mind. So we have to think more consciously about that. We have to think about the intentionality of erasing indigenous people and removing them violently, like the Homestead Act, and thinking of other ways that we have unfortunately fallen into that same space. Because just like they were removed because of the Homestead Act, we were brought in. We were kidnapped so that we could then become labor and become exchanging for goods and spices and other things like that. And so this is how the start of that became. Next slide, please. This is how the start of the lie became. And it's up to us to dig past the lies so that we can find the truth, you all. We have to understand that. We cannot continue to ignore the fact that this holiday is not based on America being free. This holiday is based off of killing other people and stealing their land, and then somehow finding a way to celebrate that you all have accomplished something great. We haven't done anything, because we're exploited and we're oppressed. We just have literally been pawns in a chess game. We have to think about what the Reconstruction period has done, and think about how that has been a major contribution to all of the different strategic plans that have allowed us to be divided out and to be isolated. So we can think about Jim Crow, we can think about segregation, we can think about the idea of the lie behind the Emancipation Proclamation. We can think about all of these different things and how it's led us, to the confusion that we now hold today. We can think even more about how, you have this whole period going from the Civil War of 1865 all the way to the collapse of 1898, and we still don't have any further answers. Because once somebody starts lying to you, they have found a way to massage that lie. And the oppressor has a good thing going. So why would they find a way to let that lie come out? If they allowed us to find out the truth, then they would understand that we would revolt, just like our ancestors did. We would push back. We would not tolerate it anymore. And that becomes a threat to them. You must understand that the whole purpose of slavery, yes, it was a dehumanizing system, but beyond that, it was a system that would profit off of people, because everything goes back to capitalism. So before we even think about why Abe Lincoln saved the slaves, that is absurd. Why? Because it was cheaper to end slavery. That's why he signed the Emancipation Proclamation. And the same goes for the Reconstruction period. It was all about what's the biggest profit? How can we make the most money? How can we get the most bang for our buck so that we can do what we need to do? How can we stretch our money forward? How can we get as many resources as possible for as little amount of money? How can we treat African people and indigenous people as poorly as possible so that we can continue to profit in a different way from their outcomes and their misery? How can we do this? How can we do this? Oh, I know. Let's find a way to charge them larger interest rates when they apply for home loans. Yeah, that's a good idea. Oh, let's find a way to make sure that they can't live in certain parts of the neighborhood so that we can make sure that those houses are way out of their budget. Let's make sure that we pay them less money on the dollar than the European person. And if they're African marginalized people, let's make sure we pay them 60 cents to the dollar or 80 cents, whatever the stupid cent is, because it's not a dollar. I know that. sure that we make it really hard for differently abled African people to just be able to navigate in this world, because we have built a world that is able-bodied only. So let's make sure we do everything we can to make it really hard for differently abled African people. Let's make sure that we don't honor policies that would benefit them. Let's make sure that we refuse to acknowledge that LGBTQ African people matter. And let's make it really, really hard for them to just be who they are in all aspects of every single day. Let's ignore pronouns. Let's ignore the fact that non-binary people exist. Let's continue to live in a cis, heteronormative, patriarchal society, because that is what works for us, because we are Europeans and we value America and we value money and we value people dying if it means we can make some money. And that, everyone, is American history in 10 seconds or less, okay? So we have to think about that, you all, and we have a responsibility. We have a responsibility. You already know what I'm going to say, so you should say it with me on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. We need to join an organization that is working for justice. And I will say this before I close and hand it back to my dad. You may be still trying to process why we keep saying that every weekend. You all have to understand, we are saying that because we don't care what organization for justice that you join. We just want you to join some organization that is working for justice. We don't need you to be a part of our organization. We do need you to be a part of some organization that is working for justice. And that benefits all of us if you decide to join some organization, whichever one that may be. How does that benefit us? Because that's more organizations that can come together. Don't you all see? Don't you all understand? If you've studied anything about labor politics or labor movements or anything like that, you understand that it's not one worker who can change the difference. It's not 3 workers. It's not 5 workers. It's the whole darn force. And the fact that they literally walk off the job, because now nobody is making products. So the plant can't even operate because nobody is working. So you have to give a livable wage raise to everyone because everybody is coming together and nobody is making your product anymore. You have to understand what that looks like. If all the students walk out of my classroom, then I need to figure out a different way to teach the lesson because I have no students to teach it to, which means if they want me to drop an assignment or if they want me to change the grade for everyone, I have a moral responsibility to do that. I need to get them back in the classroom. My point is collectivism works. That's my point. People coming together, that works. That's my point. And with every other example that we've seen, it has risen to be true that when large amounts of people come together, there is no stopping them, especially if they all have a unified goal that they're trying to achieve. And so if the All African People's Revolutionary Party works with the American Indian Movement, which works with the Palestinian Liberation Organization, which works with the Black Alliance for Peace Organization, which works with the Irish Socialist Republic organization, which works with the Filipinx Gabriela organization, they're not going to be able to stop us, you all. They can barely stop us now as organizations, and we're working together. But the more people that join an organization that is working for justice, the more social justice loving people we have to combat this system, and the harder it is for this system to maintain its current oppressive status, because they cannot take all of us. And especially if we continue to fight, even when some of us fall back and when some of us sacrifice ourselves for the people and we die. So I would encourage you to what? If you have not already joined an organization that is working for justice, we strongly need you to make a decision. Are you going to be with us or are you going to be against us? Because this system is taking us out no matter who is in office, no matter what bills have been passed, no matter who is voting for bills to not be passed. We continue to see African and indigenous people get stabbed and shot down every single minute of every day. And in some cases, we don't even know that it's happened because those folks' lives are even less significant than the marginalized lives that we barely already hear about. So we have a decision to make, you all. Join an organization that is working for justice, stay safe out there, and do something for your people because it matters. Ashe.
Ashe, Midasi, Asante Sana. Thank you, Shakur. I hope that your power comes on soon. And just so y'all know, there have been many times where we've had these challenges doing this program. I mean, when you have 163 episodes, there's going to be challenges. I've had a couple of times where my power was out and I was just like Shakur is today, sitting in her car, traveling on the road, stopping in Ku Klux Klan town, USA, having the Klansmen come out and watch me and try to intimidate me while I do this program. Never going to happen. We're doing it. We're making it happen. That's what we do in the APRP. So thank you, Shakur, for enduring that to participate in this program further. And we're just going to continue and talk about how absurd July 4th is as a so-called Independence Day. And just to give some context to why we call it absurd, the Declaration of Independence, which is the document that the colonizers used to grant freedom to these territories here, the Declaration of Independence, the Emancipation Proclamation, the Freedmen's Bureau, and the Hayes-Tilden Compromise. Now, even for some people watching this who don't live in this country probably know more about these things than people that live here, because people in this country don't study history, don't know anything about history, and that's all by design. And so we should just talk about it for a minute. The Declaration of Independence is the document that actually represents the US Constitution, right? And that was finalized on or around, not precisely known, but on or around July 4th, 1776. And this was the document that supposedly granted freedom to people that live in this society. But we all know that that was a bunch of nonsense, because at that time, African people were enslaved, period. We were enslaved, we were property. So that document, as Kwame Ture, I was looking at an interview from Kwame Ture, and the interviewer said, "So what are your thoughts on the Constitution?" He said, "Toilet paper." And that's absolutely correct. That's exactly what it is, toilet paper. I wouldn't even wipe my behind with it, to be honest with you. I think my behind is worth something much better than that sleazy garbage piece of paper called the US Constitution. I wouldn't even let it touch my body. But the point is that we were not free on July 4th, 1776. They were stealing lands from indigenous people. So they certainly were not free. Even European women were not included in the Constitution. But we all know the majority of European women in this country are lost cause. So I'm not saying all of them. There are many of them that are down with the struggle, but y'all that are out here listening, you got a lot of work to do with your sisters, and unfortunately, you're on your own with that. We don't have time, capacity, or desire to deal with any more white woman nonsense. So even though you were not included in the Constitution, most of the European women still stand shoulder to shoulder with the capitalist system and white supremacy. So that's the Declaration of Independence. The Emancipation Proclamation, we just had Juneteenth a couple of weeks ago. January 1st, 1863, the law was signed eradicating chattel slavery of African people in this country. And as Shakur mentioned, reference alluded to, that was done simply because of the desire on the part of Northern capitalists to industrialize the South with the creation of mechanized production like the cotton gin to replace human hands picking cotton. That's a much more profitable method to use mechanization. And so the Northern capitalists, not having the slightest concern about us as African people, don't get that confused, but simply wanting to create a process of production that would be more profitable for them, knew that they had to overrun the Southern slave system. And also the fact that we were resisting, they never tell you this, we were having constant slave revolts. The slave revolt in South Carolina in the early 1800s, the two in Virginia in the 1800s, Nat Turner, and then another one, Gabriel Prosser. There were so many slave revolts happening that the concept of the thinking that we would continue to be enslaved was just not realistic. And these people that ran this country understood that. In fact, Abraham Lincoln talked about it. When he talked about the alternatives to eradicating chattel slavery, he talked about the possibility of sending all of the Africans here at that time back to Africa, It would have been interesting if that would have all these Negroes running around here today talking about they ain't African. These white folks 200 years ago were talking about sending us all back to Africa. It would have been interesting if that would have happened. I wonder what these Negroes would be saying. But anyway, the point is that was the reference for the Emancipation Proclamation. The Freedmen's Bureau mentioned on a previous slide and the Hayes-Tilden Compromise are very critical portions of U.S. history, because what those two pieces of legislation did after slavery during Reconstruction, it said on the previous slide, that was the only period that held any level of promise for African people in this country's history. So when these idiots are talking about Make America Great, clearly they're not talking about it. Any African that doesn't know that, you're just an idiot and confused. So the Freedmen's Bureau happened, and what the Freedmen's Bureau contained were policy decisions that were geared towards helping Africans who were just able to get out of the slave system to have the opportunity to have land at little to no cost, and to have education, and to have resources to be able to get loans and do all. This was what the policy was designed to do. This is in the 1870s. You don't even have that today. In the 1870s, this is what happened. But the European backlash, again, Lyndon Johnson said in the 1960s, you want to get a poor white man to support the capitalist system, just keep telling him that he's better than the Negro. And that's absolutely correct. That's all you got to do with poor white men and women and them. And, because white LGBTQ people they're white people, and most of them are committed to the capitalist white system. That's just a fact. So this is the reality, and those of us who are involved in this struggle life know this. And so these people have been on the side of capitalism since day one, and they continue to be on the side of capitalism. So they never were going to settle for the compromise policy decisions that were in the Freedmen's Bureau legislation. So they waged a massive backlash to it. And the results of that were some of the things that happened were like the Hayes-Tilden Compromise happened a few years later, where in order to ensure that these components of the Freedmen's Bureau were never implemented, the compromise was that the Union troops, the Northern troops, would all be removed from the Southern states. And of course, this meant the naked terror of racist white supremacy would be unleashed against the African masses. Now, please don't misconstrue what we're saying. We're not saying that we needed the U.S. military to protect us. We've always protected ourselves. The U.S. military has never protected us against anything. But what we're talking about is just giving you a context of the history to demonstrate that there's never been a period where we have had freedom and peace in this country. So to come here in 2023 and tell us that July 4th is a day we should respect and commemorate, you can kiss me all over my black ass if that's what you're telling me and expect me to believe that. All over it, kiss it. That will never happen. And we're going to do everything we can to wake our people up and understand why it should not happen. So, the strategy around pushing these backward holidays on us 24/7, 365 days a year is because if we, even a small extent, believe that we have some potential to be free in this society, and this is a critical point, y'all, because a lot of us, even some of us in the movement, we still operate in the movement under the philosophy that we're fighting to wake this country up. Now, that was the whole philosophy behind the civil rights movement of the 60s and the Southern Christian Leadership Conference and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. The whole philosophy of nonviolence was based in the concept that we would appeal to the morality of white America. And when they would see us brutalized, they would wake up and see the error in their ways, and they would change their behavior. We're 60 years later, and that is still, that's not happening. It will never happen, because as Kwame Ture said, nonviolence is great when your enemy has a conscience, but this country has no conscience. So that strategy will not work. They don't speak that language, you all, they don't understand it. So because of that, what they're trying to do is ensure that they have their systems in place to keep us asleep, because they know that once we wake up, their days are numbered. They know that once the African masses wake up, and I'm talking about Africans everywhere on earth, our family, our African family at home in Africa, no question, they have to keep them from waking up. Africans in Europe, in the Western Hemisphere, once we wake up and realize that our salvation lies in us coming together against them, and when I them, I don't mean white people, because a lot of white people are going to side with us. There are a lot of white people that are going to do that. There are a lot of them that won't, of course, but there are a lot of them that are going to side with us. They can't wait. They're waiting for us to tell them what to do. I know them. I work with them all the time. They're waiting for us. There are white people right now, if we were confused, we could tell them to go rob banks and they would do it. But we understand that's not what we need to do to get our liberation in 2023. But my point, because you know, some of y'all are really, so he's on there saying we should rob banks. That's what people leave here saying. So you have to clarify everything, because we've been so muddied in the head by this backward decadent system. What we're saying is that there are many people who will wake up and fight for a just society. And the capitalist system knows this, even if we don't know it. So what they do is they spend all their time telling us, oh, you know, you're not African. People in Africa don't like you. And they spend all their time telling our people at home in Africa, yeah, you know, you don't, those people in the West, those Africans over there, they don't believe they're African. They have nothing to offer. They can't do anything. They're a waste of your time. And then they tell all of us, yeah, you can never unite. You can't do that. And then they tell white people, yeah, you know, the reason why you don't have anything is because of them, those brown and black and red people. They're the reason you don't have anything. So that's their strategy. That's what they have, to keep telling us this garbage 24/7, 365 days a year. And you can't say it's not successful. It's very successful. If you want to see the greatest manifestations of white supremacy, go around African people, go around indigenous people, go around Asian people, and that's where you'll see it. So no question that it's successful. When I was a child, I wanted to get our family car fixed at this African that opened a car garage in our neighborhood. So I went to my mom and I said, you know, we should take the car there. They were trying to talk about what they were going to do to try to figure out how to get the car fixed. And she said, in under the hood, car no more good. And you can't say, well, that was the 1970s, because we still have that thinking today. You know, my mother-in-law has Alzheimer's, and I'm constantly amazed at how, even with Alzheimer's, she can't remember. She lives in the house with me every day, and with my wife, her daughter, she can't remember either of us. But white supremacy goes right through the Alzheimer's and still works perfectly, because she will sit there and say ends ain't shit. She'll do that. She'll talk like that all the time, even though she doesn't even know who the hell she is, but the white supremacy is still intact. So my point is that these people have an effective strategy, and they're using it, and they use it constantly to convince us that there's nothing else we can do except accept them as our rulers and masters. And most of us do that. So that's why we have to constantly promote the need for peace for all justice-loving people on earth. And we have to help people understand that power begins at conception. The first thing we have to do in our quest for power to control our lives is to believe that we have a right to control our lives, and to believe that we're worth having the right to control our lives. That's where it begins. That's where we have to do that. And so in order for that to happen, we have to know who we are. And we are not Americans. If you think you're an American, that's the reason why you're confused and can't go forward. We gotta accept who we are. We're Africans. That's it. And don't give me this nonsense. Well, it wasn't named Africa. We don't give a damn about that. If you want to call it, moonwalk land, then we're moonwalk people, goddammit. We don't care. It's not about the name. People want to sit there and have an argument about the name. We're talking about we're connected to the land base, because the land base has the materials to govern our lives. That's what it's about. Boy, I'm so sick of all this idiotic nonsense that that masquerades as intelligence in this society. Wake the hell up. Read a book every once in a while. Jesus Christ, Allah, please bless whoever the hell you believe in. Use it to wake up. Power begins at conception. And when we continue to talk about the absurdity of this so-called holiday, as we've outlined, people ain't never been free in this country. The majority of people in this country right now have never been free. Discrimination is the law of the land in this society. White supremacy, patriarchy, etc., are dominant policies because their intent capitalism does not work without those policies. So that's it, right? Like, do you sit there when it's somebody else's birthday and they're getting all the celebration, all the cake, and people walking by you, not giving you any food, no cake, you ain't getting no presents. In fact, you had a cell phone sitting in front of you and they snatched that and gave that to the person celebrating their birthday, just no respect for you at all. Do you sit there and talk about, well, I'm celebrating my birthday? No, that has nothing to do with you. So we're not sitting here talking about we're celebrating the 4th. Don't tell me to have a good 4th. To hell with you, I don't want to hear that. That has nothing to do with us. Wake the hell up. It has nothing to do with us. Malcolm X was 100% correct when he said just because you're sitting at the table doesn't make you a diner. You have to be eating to be a diner. Just because we're sitting in this country doesn't make us Americans. So we got to understand that, because a lot of us are so confused about that. In every war fought for freedom and democracy, so-called freedom and democracy, it has had nothing to do with either of those things. Every war this country has fought has been about extending its dominance on the planet Earth and nothing else. That's all it's ever fought a war for to do. Nothing else. Even the Civil War was about that. It had nothing to do with us. None of these wars have anything to do with us. The Civil War, all the World War I, World War II, the Korean War, the War in Vietnam, the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, the invasion of Grenada, the invasion of Libya, the invasion of Panama, none of that has a damn thing to do with us. Nothing to do with us. And we have got to understand that. We have got to understand what our interests are. And a big part of that is if we know we're African, then that will eliminate that. You know that stuff has nothing to do with you. You understand? Like, the people that are confused are running around here talking about, well, we shouldn't have invaded Afghanistan. You didn't invade nowhere, fool. You don't even have a cap gun. How the hell are you gonna talk about we shouldn't have invaded Afghanistan? You don't control that. You have nothing. They will sick the military on you, clown. Talking about our military. Well, our military. If you live in an area, you're African, and you live in an area that has an urban rebellion, guess who's coming? The National Guard. That's a part of the U.S. military. They will shoot you dead if you're walking on your own street to your own house after the curfew, talking about armed military. You're out of your damn mind. You don't have a military yet. We're building one, the All-African People's Revolutionary Army, which is a part of the All-African People's Revolutionary Party and the All-African Committee for Political Coordination. But right now, you don't have no military. You're in the European capitalist military, and your job is to carry out their objectives for their agenda. It has nothing to do with you. That's a fact. Nobody can refute that. And oppressed people have absolutely no obligation because of these realities to uphold these institutions. I don't know why we fall to this pressure. We have no obligation. I'm not doing it. The shirt I got on says serve the people. I got my red, black, and green flag out here. These Europeans out here. We haven't seen any Africans out here, but we out here because we love the lake. We love the environment. We love the nature. The indigenous people have wonderful land here. And we are not going to let these people dictate to us how we can relax and enjoy our lives. So that's why we're here, even though they look at it like we're here, like it has something to do with them. Like, why are we, like they have to give us permission or something to be here? You know, that's why they want to know, what's that flag about? Like, does it fit our standards? No, it doesn't fit. The hell with you. It has nothing to do with you. And if you try to touch my flag, you'll find out quickly how it has nothing to do with you. So we got to understand we're oppressed people. Our interests have nothing to do with the interests of the people who oppress us. Those two interests are diametrically opposed to one another. So if we know that we're Africans, we know that. And if we know that, then we know that the institutions that promote this society can never promote us. Again, Malcolm X was 100% correct when he said the enemies of this system are usually our friends, and the friends of this system are usually our enemies. That's 100% correct. So these are the things that we have to understand, you all, and keep in mind. And, again, these obvious contradictions, right? Like the capitalist ruling classes, they fully realize the bankruptcy of their position. And what I mean by that is that they know that this empire is built on brittle sticks. They know that. They know that this is stolen land. They know that we're stolen people. They know that everything that they do internationally to maintain their power is based on a lie. They know all that. They know because of these realities, their hold is tenuous. They know that they don't have much margin for error. They know all this. We're the ones that are confused about it, but they're not confused. They understand clearly. If you want to get the best analysis of what this system is about, just listen to the ruling class people. They will tell you because they're in power. They don't have to be afraid of you. They know you're disorganized and you sitting there trying to figure out how you can rub up and kiss their behind. So they don't worry about us because we're not doing what we need to do to take power from them. The minute we start doing that, then you'll see a different response from them. But right now, they'll tell you exactly what's going on in this system. So because of that, they know their system is corrupt. But again, you got to remember, these people don't have morality. So they don't care about the fact that their system is corrupt. They don't care. That doesn't bother them. They're not concerned about that. They're only concerned about maintaining their power. So all they're focused on doing is keeping us confused. That's all they're focused on doing. That's why they love it. That's why you're seeing the proliferation of all of these sellout Negroes. And when I say that, I mean all over the world, all over Africa. They're sellout Negroes. They're chump Negroes. They're bootlicking Negroes. They're white man's coon Negroes. All over Africa, all over Europe, all over the Western Hemisphere. There's bootlicking coon Negroes out here. They have access to all the media they want to say whatever the hell they want. So in this country, some of the people, like you can talk about a lot of the presidents in Africa who fit that role. There are a number of them there that fit that role. And you could talk about people here, for example, Clarence Thomas or I can't even remember, Candace Owens or some of these people, all these people, they have free reign to say whatever the hell they want to say. And that's because the system understands that they have to begin, because a lot of us have been tricked into believing that progress is defined by individual representation, not the advancement of the masses of the people. So they can push these individual coon Negroes in front of us. And a lot of us think, okay, well, they have that platform. They must have something going for them, or they hold this office, so they must be somebody that has some legitimacy. And so that's how they trick us into listening to these people, or at least giving these people respect, when really these people deserve nothing but for us to defecate on them. Really, I mean, they're not even good enough for that. But the capitalist system has these people and they're using them, and this should tell you the fact that this is happening more. Like a lot of you, like, where is this person coming from? Every day that I turn on the news, there's a new house Negro on there talking. Like, where did they get this Negro from? I've never seen this Negro before. This is a new one. Every day there's a new one. And you shouldn't be dismayed by that. That's a good sign when you see that. Because it's like we have always and consistently said that Kwame Nkrumah said it in his book, Neocolonialism. And that can be tied to Vladimir Lenin's book 100 years ago, Imperialism. Vladimir Lenin wrote the book Imperialism, and he said imperialism is the highest stage of capitalism. And that's correct, because imperialism is the aspect of capitalism where capitalism can no longer find the resources it needs to dominate in the host country where it exists. So it has to go to other countries and steal their resources. And so that's been the lifeblood of capitalism, to have imperialism. And then in Kwame Nkrumah's book, Neocolonialism, he talks about neocolonialism being the last stage of imperialism. So what he's saying is that the concept of creating a class of people to exploit the resources in Africa for the European capitalists, a class of people that look like us, a class of people all over the world that'll represent European capitalist interests. It will convince us that those interests are the same as our interests. That's what neocolonialism is. So that's why you've seen a proliferation of all these black-faced capitalists, whoever it is, whether it's Ado in Ghana, whether it's Obama, whoever the hell it is. That's why you've seen a proliferation of that. And that's why a lot of us are fooled into thinking that that's progress. But really all it is capitalism in blackface. That's all it is. And so this is all they have left, you all, because they know at this stage in 2023, we're not going to believe white people. We don't believe Joe Biden. We don't believe Donald Trump. We don't believe the one in Britain. We don't believe the one in France. We don't believe any of these crackers. There's nothing they can say to us that we will believe. And the capitalist system knows that. So now they got to go get some Negroes to deliver the same message to us. And we got to be careful that we don't fall into that trap. And that's what they're doing now. So it's a completely bankrupt system. And they know that. And so it's on its last leg. And so they're trying their best to convince us that we still need to have faith in them. And there's just no neutrality, there's no safety, and there's no sanity based on not taking a clear position against their agenda. Not, well, I just want to barbecue and I'm off Tuesday. Don't take that limp-kneed liberal position. Don't do it. If you're off Tuesday and you want to barbecue, we're not saying you can't do that, but get yourself a red, black, and green, or a red, black, green, and gold flag, put it up, listen to some liberation movement, have a portion where you talk to your family and friends about our need to continue our struggle, have libation, invite the ancestors into it. If you do all that, then you won't be celebrating July 4th, okay? But if you just go out there and barbecue, nobody says a damn thing about the contradictions in this society. It never comes up. You fill your face, you're just eating barbecue chicken and ribs, potato salad, and all of that, sweet potato pie, and all that nonsense. And then you later on, you go to the fireworks show. Well, then, God damn it, you're celebrating the 4th of July. I don't give a damn what you say. That's exactly what you did on that day. And by celebrating the 4th of July, what we mean is that you participated in upholding the system that oppresses our people. You did that. And that's what they want you to do. Because if you're doing that, you're not doing the first example I gave, which is awakening us so we can take our rightful place fighting for the complete overthrow of this backward system. We're not doing that. We're just participating to perpetuate the system. And a part of you subconsciously is doing that. Oh, it's our country. We're free. Thank God for freedom. God bless America. Make America great again. God bless America. That's what you're doing. So you have to have a conscious and concerted effort to reject that nonsense. I know this day is a day of mourning. The hell with this day. Burn a damn flag on Tuesday. That's what you should do. It's liberating. Burn the U.S. flag on Tuesday. That's what you should do. It's liberating. Do that. Then you won't be celebrating this nonsense. And the only reason the institutions of imperialism are dominant still is because the majority of people are not actively standing up against them in an organized fashion. That's it, you all. It's not because they're just so strong and there's nothing we can do about it. That's not what it is. It's because most of us are doing what I just described. We're just barbecuing, eating ribs, barbecue sauce flowing down our cheek, eating corn on the cob, not really thinking about nothing about other than who we can have sex with next and how we can get money and how we can manipulate somebody to do what we want them to do for our own individualistic interests. That's exactly what the capitalist system wants you to do. Because if you're doing that, you're doing nothing to challenge it. And if you're doing nothing to challenge it, then all of this will continue. And all of this continuing means that we will never get to a place where we can determine our own lives. And for some of us, that's okay. Some of us don't want to determine our own life. But for anybody that has any dignity and is a human being operating with any active brain cells, You don't have anything if you don't have dignity. And we will never have dignity as long as we're following along the system that puts us in this oppressive condition in the first place. So it's critical for us that we recognize that when they have their institutions, we have to resist them. It's our responsibility. It's out of respect for our ancestors. We have to resist their institutions. You are disrespecting your ancestors when you put on red, white, and blue, or when you just don't do anything. You just eat on Tuesday and don't even acknowledge. You got to acknowledge the sacrifice of our ancestors. And that's how you pay tribute to them. Frederick Douglass told you 200 damn years ago that the 4th of July wasn't your day. So if you want to respect our ancestors, you got to stand up and make a concerted effort to do that. You got to do that because you owe that. If you were able to barbecue Tuesday, it's because our people fought for you to have that comfort to do that. So you owe, you're in debt. So pay the damn debt back and don't fall into this nonsense. Don't fall into this foolishness. Stand up for what's right because people stood up for you and you got a responsibility to do that. So we thank you for joining us today. And we hope that you remember on Tuesday what we talked about because it's very important. We have to start a movement. And speaking of movements, we're going to be talking about that next week. We're going to talk about the rebirth of a radical worldwide African liberation movement. Like I said, many of these cotton field slave mentality, coon Negroes are being pushed out in front of us to attempt to convince us that falling in line with what the capitalist system wants is the best solution for us. And so what you're seeing now is a rebirth of radical African politics. And so we're going to talk about that, not just in the United States, all over the world, you're seeing this. You know, there are things happening. The parliamentary victory of the African Party for the Independence of Guinea-Bissau and Guinea-Bissau a couple of weeks ago, the National Black Organizing Convention that took place in Atlanta last weekend. There are a lot of things like happening in the African world. So we're going to talk about that next week because you won't hear about it on CIA and CNN. They ain't trying to talk to you about none of that. So join us next week. Go to APRP Forward Ever Shop. That's a good thing to do. Buy materials that support messages. You should have bought something so you could wear it on Tuesday. Every July 4th, I wear something advancing the struggle of the African masses. I dress like that every day. Every single day I dress like that. I go to work dressed in clothes that advance the African struggle. You don't believe that? Contact my job and they'll tell you. I'm happy. Contact me. I'll tell you where I work. You can call me. Is a job who dressed in Pan-African, revolutionary Pan-African clothes? Yes. Oh, yeah, he does all the time. Yes. On Friday, this past Friday, I went to work. I wore a shirt that said that my wife bought me that said, educate, agitate, organize. That's how I dress every day, you all. I don't dress one way for you, and then I got a suit and tie on for the master. Yes, sir. You ain't got to worry about me, boss. I'm not going to ever be a proud. I'm going to do whatever you want me to do, sir. It's them other Negroes you got to be concerned about, not me, sir. I'm your ace spoon coon, sir. No, we're not doing that in 2023 and beyond. We're not doing that. Our ancestors didn't do it. I know they want you to think they did, but they didn't do it. You had some that did it, just like you have some that do it today. But the majority of our people had dignity. We're going to continue to have dignity. So buy some clothes that reflect that. Join the All African People's Revolutionary Party, AAPRP-INTL.org. For the first 6 months, all we want you to do is just study. Just study. And don't say, well, that's nothing. You know you're not studying now. You might read some book every once in a while. Some of us, most of us don't read anything. Most of us are operating under the mistaken and dangerous belief that we know everything we need to know right now, having studied nothing and having been propagandized 24/7 by our enemies. We actually are insane enough to believe we know everything we need to know. And how is that working out for us? Clearly, that is not an effective strategy. So the first 6 months you join the APRP, all you're asked to do is get in the habit of studying. And the reason why we do that is we know most of our people are not used to engaging in a consistent study process. We used to run in our mouths, but we're not used to engaging in a process where what we say has to be backed up by analytical research. So we spend the first 6 months in our work study process training people how to do that. That's what it is. So you should join. You should participate. And if you don't want to join the APRP, you should join another organization that has a political education program. And if you don't want to join any of those other organizations, you should start one that has a political education program. If you have an organization already and you wanted to have a political education program, we can help you do that. We're happy to help you do that. We don't charge people. We're revolutionaries. We're not trying to make money off of the struggle. We're trying to have liberation. So reach out to us. And the way you do that is through a betterworld.me, www.betterworld.me. You can reach out to us and we're happy to talk to you about how to organize. We're serious. You know, I just told you, my child is sitting there in the dark right now in her car doing this program because her power is out. That's how we roll, you all. We're not like a lot of people. Oh, well, my power's out. I guess I'm just going to have to cancel. That's what a lot of y'all would do. We are serious about this struggle. And we are serious. A lot of you, if you were doing what I'm doing, if you were relaxing, taking a couple of days to recharge, I ain't going to do that program today. I'm up here doing I'm getting high. I'm getting my buzz on. I can't, no. We're here every week doing this. And we will be here as long as we have breath in our bodies. So go to hoodcommunist.org. Hood Communist is an outstanding, wonderful site of revolutionary African literature. We got to support it, you all. So please do that. Support all of our programs. We have a number of very wonderful programs that are designed to uplift. You know, you got to be careful because imperialism has such tricky and crafty language. Think about it. You want to say, well, I want to get enlightened. What the hell? Enlightened means that you're learning more. So if you're dark, what does that mean? Think about these things for a second. In order for things to be right, it should be fair. Right? Think about this, the subtleties of capitalist white supremacist language, right? This is what they do to us. So go ahead and watch these programs. Please tell more people about my book, A Guide for Organized Defense Against White Supremacist, Patriarchal, and Fascist Violence. The program we did last week on preparing for white racist violence, a lot of that came out of the book. I love to talk to people more about how to create a security plan and how to organize for the safety of your loved ones, your comrades, all of that. Hit me up. We can talk about that. We appreciate each and every one of you. We want you to stay safe. Enjoy burning the U.S. flag on Tuesday or before that. You can burn a flag any day. You don't have to wait till Tuesday. Just burn it any day you want. That's all it's good for is burning. So burn it. Burn the damn thing. And be safe. Be proud. Be happy. Try to understand that whatever problems you have, they are not because of you. You are not the problem. The problem is this backward system, and we're going to destroy it and create a reality where people can get the support, the energy, and the nurturing that they deserve to be complete and fully functioning human beings. Have a great rest of your Sunday evening. Forward ever, backwards never.